Alright, so continuing on from the last video, make sure you still got the whileloop.py program open in your editor. So we've got a while loop on lines 5 through 7, and you can see that it's functionally identical to the for loop that I commented out on the lines 1 and 2. If you're programmed in C or Java, that while loop is how a for loop really works in those languages, that both compile to the same code. That's not true in Python. Although we're getting the same result, the two loops are doing very different things behind the scenes. I mention that because you wouldn't use a while loop just to iterate through a range of values, but it did provide a good example to see what's going on. Before we look at more realistic examples of while loops, there's a couple of things I want to say about this one. We've seen that the condition I less than 10 controls execution of the block of code in the loop. As long as I is less than 10, the code will be executed. Once I becomes equal to or greater than 10, the condition becomes false and the loop terminates. So that leads to two other important things to consider. First, the condition must be initialized before the loop starts. With the for loop, we just used I without setting a value first. Python knows to give it the first value from the range and continue from there. With the while loop though, we had to give I a value first, and we do that on line 4. If we hadn't, we'd get an error that I is not defined. The second thing is that we need some way within the loop for the condition to become false. So remove the indentation, as I'm doing here, before I plus 1, then we'll run the program again. We'll run the program. Now because we're not increasing I inside the loop, the condition never becomes false and the loop will keep running forever. And we need to go up to the Run menu in IntelliJ and choose Stop to stop this. We could have clicked on the little red button to the left as well. And if you're using idle, Control C will stop the program as well. When we stopped incrementing I in the loop, there's no way for the condition to become false, so the loop just kept going as you saw. We could just as well, in that scenario, have written the loop as follows. While true, as you can see there. And that would get us the same undesirable situation. In some of our other examples, you will see loops that just use true as the condition, but the body of the loop will then contain a way to break out of the loop. It's easy to see why a for loop is preferable in this case. The codes on lines 1 and 2 are easier to understand and there's less chance of introducing an error. There are many reasons for looping around a block of code that don't involve just going through items in a sequence. For example, in an adventure game, players have to choose a direction in order to exit from a location. If they don't choose one of the available exits, they stay where they are, and that's an ideal use of a while loop. So let's create a new file here. We're going to call this one adventure.py. Alright, we're going to start by typing available underscore exits is equal to square brackets and double quote north, double quote comma. We're going to do south, east and west, all in double quotes separated by commas. And we've got our right square bracket on the right hand side. Line 3, chosen underscore exit equals and two double quotes, meaning an empty string. Now, while loop is going to be while chosen exit not in available exits colon, and indented on the next line, chosen underscore exit is equal to input parentheses double quotes, please choose a direction colon space, then we've got a double quote and right parentheses. Then on line 7, print and double quotes in parentheses, aren't you glad you got out of there? So in this particular room in the game, the available exits are in the available underscore exits list, north, south, east and west. In order to enter the loop at all, we have to initialize chosen underscore exit to a value that isn't in the list. We could have used anything except one of those directions, but an empty string makes sense here. Because an empty string is not in the list, the condition evaluates to true and the program enters the loop. And it's a very simple loop. It just requests input from the player and assigns what they type to the chosen underscore exit variable. The loop then tests the condition again. If the direction they typed is not one of the ones in the list, then the code block in the loop is executed again. And this continues until I type one of the valid directions and escape. So if we run the program now, And we'll enter various strings when prompted to see what happens. I'm going to start by entering up. Now that's not in the list, so we get the input prompt again. Down. Also not in the list, and we go around the loop again. Now when I enter east here, the condition evaluates to true, and we leave the loop. One of the important features of while loops is that they can be used when you can't determine in advance how many times you will need to loop. A for loop will repeat for each item in a predetermined sequence, whereas with a while loop, you don't need to know how many times the loop will execute. One particular application of this is reading data from a file or an internet stream. It's difficult, not impossible, but difficult to know in advance how much data there is to read. A while loop can be used to keep reading until there's no more data left. And we'll see this soon when we look at file I/O, input and output, in Python. In the next video, we'll look at break and continue with while loops. See you in the next video.